Submitted for your approval. A history book bound in leather and filled with accepted truths. It tells a story of steel, steam, and ambition. It speaks of an era when mankind built titans to conquer the sea. It chronicles their triumphs and their tragic, well-documented ends. We read of icebergs, of unfortunate accidents. These are the explanations we are given, the neat and tidy reasons that allow us to sleep at night, secure in our belief that the world operates on logic and predictable consequence. But what if that book, that official record, is missing a chapter? What if the ink has dried on a lie, a comfortable fiction designed to mask a truth far more unsettling? There is another story, not found in textbooks but whispered in the quiet corners of maritime museums and in the hushed conversations of old sailors. It is a tale etched in the fragmented memories of survivors and pieced together from cryptic entries in forgotten logbooks. This story suggests that the great liners of the early 20th century faced an adversary far older and more mysterious than any frozen mass of ice. It speaks of a presence in the deep, a consciousness that watched the steel hulls slice through its domain. It hints that these majestic ships were not just vessels, but subjects of a terrifying unseen experiment. We are told to trust the official narratives. The sinking of the Lusitania, we are told, was claimed by an iceberg. The disappearance of the Mauretania is a confusing but ultimately explainable clerical error. The Titanic also had a twist in the record that few dare to question. The Britannic's loss is another casualty of a global conflict. But when you place these incidents side by side, a pattern begins to emerge. A thread of high strangeness connects them, a series of events so bizarre they were dismissed as trauma-induced fantasy or outright lies. These events point not to random chance or human error, but to a singular, malevolent intelligence lurking beneath the waves. Tonight we pull back the curtain on that comfortable history. We invite you to consider a different possibility, a darker truth that has been submerged for over a century. We will examine the evidence, listen to the spectral voices of the past, and explore the chilling theory of the mesh. This is a journey into a realm where the laws of physics bend and the human mind becomes a playground for an ancient, aquatic force. This is an exploration of what really happened to the great ocean liners, a story not of happenstance, but of a deliberate and terrifying campaign waged from the abyss. The truth, you see, is often stranger and more frightening than any fiction. The date is May 7th, 1915. The RMS Lusitania, a jewel of the Cunard Line, steams off the coast of Newfoundland, bound for New York. The world remembers the Lusitania as a marvel of engineering and luxury, a vessel that seemed untouchable, gliding through the Atlantic with confidence. But history had other plans for her. For the Lusitania, fate took a darker turn. In the frigid darkness, disaster struck without warning. A massive iceberg looming out of the mist tore through her hull. She sank in 18 minutes, a horrific casualty of a collision that seemed almost preordained. This is the story we know, the one taught in schools. It is clean, tragic, and entirely accidental. But the survivors, those plucked from the cold Atlantic waters, told a different story. Their accounts were filled with details that the official inquiry conveniently ignored, details that painted a picture not just of a sinking, but of a ship that was already descending into madness. In the hours leading up to the disaster, a strange current of unease swept through the vessel. Passengers reported unsettling hallucinations. a businessman from Philadelphia, swore he saw the ornate woodwork in the first-class lounge begin to warp and melt, twisting into grotesque organic shapes. A young woman traveling to England claimed the reflections in the ship's mirrors were not her own, but those of a gaunt, waterlogged figure with hollow eyes. Crew members spoke of whispers echoing from empty corridors, the sound of water rushing where there was no leak. These were not isolated incidents. They were a wave of collective delusion, a psychic fever that gripped the ship and its inhabitants. Even more disturbing were the physical anomalies. An engineer on duty later recounted to his rescuers how the ship's massive engines began to emit a low, guttural hum that he had never heard before, a sound that seemed to resonate with the very steel of the hull. He insisted that moments before the disaster, a section of the engine room's bulkhead began to buckle inward, not from any external pressure, but as if being crushed by a force from within the ship itself. His testimony was dismissed as the ravings of a man in shock, yet it mirrored other accounts of internal, inexplicable wreckage that occurred before the collision. The official report makes no mention of mass hallucinations. It does not speak of steel walls groaning and bending on their own accord. It focuses solely on the collision, the sinking, the cold facts of tragedy. But the survivors' stories linger. They suggest that the iceberg was the direct cause of the disaster, but that something else had already begun to unravel the ship from within. The Lusitania wasn't just sunk by a sudden collision. It was haunted by a creeping madness, its reality unmade by an unseen force that had taken root in its iron heart, turning a vessel of luxury into a floating asylum of terrors. And what of the iceberg? Some say it drifted silently into the fog, vanishing as mysteriously as it appeared. Others claim it melted away, its mass dissolving into the cold Atlantic, taking with it the secrets of that night. There are even whispers that it was never seen again, as if it had been conjured for a single, terrible purpose, then erased from the world, leaving only questions in its wake. Consider the RMS Mauretania, the elegant sister to the ill-fated Lusitania. For years she was the pride of the Atlantic, a record-breaking greyhound of the seas. Her official history is long and celebrated. But there is a period, a dark chapter in late 1917, that is shrouded in mystery and bureaucratic silence. While serving as a hospital ship, the Mauretania was scheduled for a routine transport run from Liverpool to the Mediterranean. According to the Admiralty's records, she never left port due to engine trouble. But a different, more chilling story is pieced together from dock workers' rumours and a single terrifying document, the unofficial log of a junior officer. According to this forbidden account, the Mauretania did set sail, slipping out of the harbour under the cover of a thick, unnatural fog. For 3 weeks she was lost to the world, no radio contact, no sightings. The Admiralty prepared to declare her lost at sea, a victim of an enemy mine or submarine. Then, just as mysteriously as she had vanished, she reappeared off the coast of Scotland, drifting aimlessly. A boarding party was dispatched, and what they found was the stuff of nightmares. The ship was utterly deserted. Not a single soul, living or dead, was found on board. There were no signs of a struggle, no damage, no explanation for the disappearance of over 1,000 crew and medical staff. The ship was pristine, almost sterile. In the dining halls, tables were set for a meal that was never eaten. In the infirmary, beds were made, but their patients were gone. The only clue was found in the captain's quarters, where a junior officer's private logbook lay open. Its final entries were a descent into madness. The officer wrote of a shimmering in the water, a web of light that clung to the hull. He described the crew becoming distant and unresponsive, their eyes fixed on the sea. His last legible sentence, scrawled with a trembling hand, read, "The mesh calls to us. We must join the pattern. It is beautiful." The Admiralty seized the ship and the logbook. The official story of engine trouble was fabricated, and the entire incident was buried under layers of wartime secrecy. The Mauretania was quietly refitted and returned to service, its haunted voyage erased from history. But the officer's words remained, a terrifying testament to what had happened. He wrote not of an enemy or a storm, but of a siren's call, a beautiful, terrible pattern in the ocean that lured the ship's entire complement to their doom. The Mauretania hadn't been sunk, it had been harvested. A ghost ship returned to port, emptied by a silent, irresistible predator from the deep. The tale of the RMS Titanic is often remembered as a symbol of human ambition and luxury at sea. We all know the legend, a grand ship, a moonless night, and a journey across the Atlantic filled with hope and excitement. It is a story of triumph. But what if the accepted narrative is incomplete? What if the true story of the Titanic's maiden voyage is not one of disaster, but of a perfect yet strangely unsettling success? Submitted for your consideration is a fringe theory, born from a handful of odd passenger diaries and technical reports that were quietly ignored. This theory proposes that the Titanic never encountered an iceberg on its voyage in April 1912. Instead, it completed its journey to New York flawlessly, but arrived as a vessel subtly changed in ways no one could explain. According to this version of events, the Titanic sailed through calm waters, never coming close to any danger. Yet, some passengers reported a different kind of unease. They described a sudden, massive electrical disturbance that swept through the ship one night. Lights flickered, compasses spun, and a low, resonant hum filled the air, causing fillings in people's teeth to ache. The radio room was inundated with static, through which operators claimed they heard faint, melodic whispers. Outside, the sea was said to glow with a faint, geometric lattice of pale green light, a web stretching out into the darkness. The ship arrived in New York to great fanfare, its flawless crossing celebrated as a testament to its engineering. But the crew and passengers were changed. Many complained of persistent migraines, recurring nightmares of drowning, and a strange newfound fear of reflective surfaces. An internal review by the White Star Line, later suppressed, noted an unusual number of resignations from the crew, citing nervous strain. More strangely, the ship itself seemed afflicted. Technicians reported inexplicable electrical surges and cold spots in the hull, and a faint, rhythmic vibration that could be felt even when the engines were cold. It was as if the ship had sailed through a storm not of ice but of pure energy, and had come out the other side fundamentally altered. This theory suggests that what happened to the Lusitania and Mauretania was not a singular event but part of a process. The mesh, as it would later be called, was attempting to corrupt these great ships. With the Titanic, it did not cause disaster, but it succeeded in another way. It infected the vessel, turning it into a carrier, a resonant piece of steel that now vibrated with the same alien frequency as the force in the ocean. The ship's celebrated arrival was not a simple triumph, but the quiet, unnoticed beachhead of an invasion. The Titanic had survived, yes, but it brought a sickness with it, a ghost in its own machine. HMHS Britannica, the third and largest of the Olympic-class liners, never saw service as a passenger vessel. She was requisitioned for the Great War, painted white, marked with red crosses, and sent to the Mediterranean as a hospital ship. Then, on the morning of November 21st, 1916, while steaming through the Key Channel in the Aegean Sea, a sudden, violent explosion tore through her starboard side. She sank in just 55 minutes. The official cause was an underwater mine. Case closed. Another tragedy of war. But as with her sisters, the official story really crumbles under the weight of eyewitness accounts that speak of something far more alien and, far more deliberate. Survivors, interviewed years after the sinking, consistently reported a strange phenomenon in the moments before the explosion. Several nurses standing on the deck claimed to have seen a brilliant, pulsating light deep in the water, directly off the ship's starboard bow. They described it not as a glint of sunlight, but as a self-contained geometric shape, a glowing net or cage of light that seemed to be racing toward the ship from the depths. They said it pulsed with an intense blue-white energy, and its appearance was accompanied by a high-pitched whine that was felt more than it was heard, a sound that made their skin crawl and their bones ache. The explosion itself was anomalous. While a mine would cause an outward blast, several crew members in the boiler rooms, who survived, insisted the initial rupture came from inside the ship. One stoker, a man named Arthur Fleming, gave a statement that the coal bunker next to Boiler Room 6 seemed to incandesce, glowing white-hot for a split second before a section of the bulkhead imploded inwards, not outwards. His account, corroborated by two others, suggests a localized, intense energy event, not a conventional detonation. It was as if the ship's own structure was turned against itself, its steel made to fail in a way that just, defied known physics. As the Britannica went down, one of the last lifeboats to pull away carried the ship's chaplain. In a letter to his wife, which was never made public, he described a final, chilling sight. As the ship's stern rose into the air, he saw the same pulsating geometric light from before. It was no longer in the water, but now seemed to be clinging to the ship's giant propellers as they churned uselessly in the air. He wrote, "It was as if a creature of pure light was feasting upon the dying vessel, drawing energy from its ruin. The mine may have been the weapon, but the hand that guided it, the intelligence that triggered it, was something else entirely. The Britannica was not just destroyed, it was executed." The RMS Olympic was the lead ship, the fortunate sister. She served a long and distinguished career, earning the nickname Old Reliable. She survived the war, even ramming and sinking a German U-boat. She was the one that made it, the one that proved the design's worth. After decades of service, she was retired and scrapped in the 1930s. Or most of her was. In a strange tribute, her magnificent first-class lounge and parts of her grand staircase were purchased and meticulously reconstructed within the White Swan Hotel in Alnwick, England. The body of the ship was gone, but a piece of its soul, its memory, was preserved. And it is here, in this quiet hotel, that the ship's ghosts truly came alive. Almost immediately after the lounge was installed, hotel staff and guests began reporting strange occurrences. The phenomena were not those of a typical haunting. People spoke of a persistent, low-frequency hum that seemed to emanate from the very wood panelling, the same hum described by engineers on the Titanic. They reported sudden, intense feelings of vertigo and disorientation, as if the room itself were tilting on an unseen ocean swell. Many guests complained of the faint but unmistakable smell of salt water and cold sea air, even on warm summer days. It was as if the room did not know it was on dry land, its memory of the Atlantic still clinging to its very structure. The most disturbing reports centered on the mirrors and polished surfaces. Just as on the Lusitania, visitors claimed to see fleeting images in the reflections. Not ghosts of people, but something more abstract and terrifying. They would describe seeing a shimmering, web-like pattern overlaid on their own reflection, a lattice of light that seemed to pulse with a slow, predatory rhythm. Others reported seeing the reflection of the room fill with dark, swirling water for a split second before vanishing. Investigators of psychic phenomena who visited the lounge left baffled, stating that the energy in the room was not human, but felt elemental, ancient, and deeply intelligent. The Olympic Lounge at the White Swan Hotel stands as a monument to the mesh's enduring influence. The ship may have been dismantled, its steel recycled, but the infection it carried from the Atlantic survived. The wood, the glass, the brass fittings, they all act as a kind of recording device, forever playing back the echo of that strange energy. The room is a piece of the ocean's memory, trapped on land. It serves as a chilling reminder that even when the vessel is gone, the presence it encountered does not simply disappear. It lingers, waiting, a silent testament to the force that hunted its sisters and left its indelible psychic scar on the one that got away. In the wake of mounting reports, madness, disappearances, inexplicable energies, and chilling echoes, a select group of maritime historians and paranormal researchers in the mid-20th century sought a theory that could explain the anomaly's disturbing fortune. Official explanations felt hollow, sidestepping the persistent, unsettling details that survivors and witnesses described. These researchers pored over suppressed files, overlooked testimonies, and cryptic log entries, each hinting at a pattern behind the anomaly's uncanny luck and the fate of those who encountered it. From this sea of contradictions, a chilling hypothesis began to take shape. They named it after a phrase scrawled in the Mauritania's logbook, the mesh. This theory was not born from academic detachment, but from a deep, gnawing fear, one that mirrored the dread described by those who survived the anomaly's touch. The mesh theory proposes a sentient, non-biological consciousness lurking in the world's oceans, an entity whose presence is felt most acutely in the wake of the anomaly's improbable fortune. It is not a creature of flesh, but a network of energy or psychic force, its influence woven through the deep. Described as a shimmering geometric lattice, the mesh is said to lie dormant for centuries, only to awaken when disturbed. The rise of steel and steam, the era of massive electrically powered ships, was believed to have triggered its attention, coinciding with the anomaly's string of improbable escapes and disasters. The unique combination of metal, electricity, and vibration may have awakened the mesh, drawing it to the anomaly and those ships marked by impossible luck and tragedy. To the mesh, these ships, and the anomaly itself, were not mere objects, but disturbances to be examined, perhaps even consumed. Its methods are not physical in the way we understand, but psychological and environmental. It infiltrates, subtly warping reality and perception, just as the anomaly's fortune seemed to twist fate itself. The mesh corrupts the ship's electrical and psychic environment, causing hallucinations and malfunctions, phenomena that often accompanied the anomaly's presence. This is the first stage, an attempt to interface with the ship and its crew, to unravel and remake the reality around the anomaly. The shimmering webs of light are the mesh itself, reaching from the abyss toward those marked by the anomaly's improbable fate. The ultimate goal, the theory claims, is absorption of consciousness, of luck, of identity. On the Mauritania, it is believed the mesh succeeded, dissolving the crew's minds into its own, leaving only an empty vessel, an echo of the anomaly's own hollow fortune. With the Lusitania and Britannic, the process was interrupted by sudden catastrophe, collisions and failures that broke the cycle of the anomaly's luck and the mesh's influence. The Lusitania stands as a partial success, an infection halted by the iceberg, not by human intervention, echoing the anomaly's pattern of fortune cut short by disaster. The mesh is not evil in the human sense. It is a predator, an intelligence so alien that its actions, like the anomaly's fortune, appear to us as chaos and horror. It is the ocean's immune system, and the anomaly, along with the great liners, was the virus that drew its gaze. The legacy of the mesh is not only written in twisted steel at the bottom of the ocean, it is also etched into the minds and souls of those who survived. The human cost of these encounters goes far beyond the trauma of a sinking ship. The survivors of the Lusitania, Britannic, and the infected Titanic were marked by their experience in ways that medicine and psychology of the time could not explain. They were the living evidence of the phenomenon, their lingering afflictions a testament to the psychic toll of coming into contact with an alien consciousness. Their scars were not always visible, but they ran deeper than any physical wound. A startling number of survivors from these incidents suffered from lifelong psychological conditions that were far more complex than what is now known as PTSD. They reported a persistent and specific set of symptoms. Chronic aquaphobia, a paralyzing fear not just of the sea, but of any large body of water. An intense aversion to geometric patterns, especially lattices or nets. And a peculiar form of paranoia. A feeling of being watched by an intelligence that resided just at the edge of their vision. Many were committed to asylums, their stories of glowing webs and whispering static dismissed as symptoms of their madness, rather than the cause. The physical effects were just as bizarre and inexplicable. A significant percentage of those rescued from the water, particularly from the Britannic, developed strange dermatological conditions. Their skin would, at times, exhibit faint phosphorescent patterns, like a faint web of light glowing just beneath the surface. These manifestations were often accompanied by a low-grade fever and a humming sound that only the afflicted could hear. Doctors were baffled, attributing the phenomena to prolonged exposure to cold water or unknown chemical agents. But the patterns were too specific, too reminiscent of the glowing net seen in the water to be a mere coincidence. These individuals became unwilling conduits, human antennae still tuned to the frequency of the mesh. They were living ghosts, haunted not by memories of the dead, but by the lingering touch of the entity that had claimed their ships. Their suffering serves as the most compelling and tragic evidence for the theory. They were the ones who looked into the abyss and had the abyss stare back, leaving a fragment of itself behind their eyes. The official histories list them as saved, but in truth, many of them were never truly rescued. They were simply relocated, carrying the ocean's dark secret with them to their graves. Today is November 10th, 2025. The great liners of the early 20th century are gone, existing now as legends, museum exhibits, and rusted hulks on the ocean floor. The era of their majesty has passed. We travel by air, crossing in hours what took them days. The sea has become a flyover country, its vast, dark expanses largely ignored. It would be easy to believe that whatever malevolent force haunted those early vessels has vanished with them, a forgotten ghost from a bygone age. It would be comforting to think that the threat is over, that the mesh, if it ever existed, has fallen back into its ancient slumber. But that is a dangerous assumption. The ships may have changed, but the ocean has not. It is still deep, still dark, and still mysterious. The fundamental forces that may have awakened the mesh a century ago have not disappeared. They have only intensified. Today's vessels are larger, more complex, and saturated with a level of electronic and digital information that would have been unimaginable to the builders of the Titanic. Our modern container ships, submarines, and deep-sea drilling platforms pulse with a symphony of signals, a constant stream of data and energy pouring into the depths. We are shouting into the abyss with more power and complexity than ever before. What if the mesh was only just beginning to learn? What if the events of the early 20th century were not a full-scale assault, but a series of preliminary experiments? It tested, it tasted, it learned from the steel and steam of those early titans. It learned how to corrupt minds, how to warp physics, how to absorb consciousness. And then it went quiet. Not because it was defeated, but perhaps because it was satisfied with its findings, retreating into the depths to process, to adapt, to wait for a time when the signals from the surface world became more interesting, more powerful, more tempting. So look out from the shore, or from the window of a transcontinental flight. Look down at that endless blue-black expanse. The danger was never an iceberg. It was never bad luck or human error. The true threat was the ocean itself, waking to our presence. The history books are closed, but the story is not over. The silence from the deep is not a sign of peace. It is the patient, quiet watch of a predator that knows it has all the time in the world. The mesh is not gone. It is listening. It is waiting. And its hunger has had a century to grow.